Coucou, what's up? It's your girl Kadija, aka the Musing Nomad, and I'm back again with another video. First and foremost, I want to wish you all a happy new year, or en français, bonne année. It's been a while that I haven't been back, and I decided to come back with a video talking about the myths and the legends of what it is to be American and how I view that after having lived abroad in Eurasia, aka Europe, but more specifically France for the past decade. So I've been in France now for over a decade, and most likely I'm probably gonna stay. It wasn't in the cards. It's not what I thought I was going to be doing. It's not somewhere I imagined being long term like this, but I'm still here, and for the time being, I think this is gonna be home. So I moved to France in my 20s, and now I'm in my 30s, and the majority of my adult years have actually now been in France rather than in the US. Like years ago, I made videos about moving to France. If you're interested in moving to France, things to do, setting up, and all of that stuff. Those videos still are available on my channel, so check them out. If you have any questions about moving here, tips and things that I can do to help, please let me know. Others in the past have messaged me on Instagram, so check me out on Instagram and via the comment section and ask me questions, and I'm more than happy to help if I can, right? So if you have questions, yeah, by all means, send me a message and I'll do my best to get back to you. For the most part, the things I'm talking about are pretty general, but I'm not someone that's apolitical, okay? Fight the power all day, every day. The personal is political. But anyways, let's get started with all of that. The largest of the myths. So this one, I broke it down in several aspects. So it's all of this for me encompass what freedom is, right? So I'm going to talk about gun violence, education, healthcare, the cost of living / job security, food, transportation, etc. The home of the free and the brave, right? This is something that's pushed down on you when the military is trying to recruit high schoolers, right, to join them. The selling point is always free education, help with housing, job security. That is the number one thing when your recruiters are coming to high school to get young people to join the military. And I think it's always interesting how they always tend to go to poorer neighborhoods or neighborhoods where it's more mixed, right? It's not just like a predominantly white school or an affluent neighborhood. They definitely try to go to areas where they can use those selling points to attract people. But it's so funny to me how this very thing that the US military tries to use to gain people to join the army is the very thing that the US doesn't stand by. So when we talk about freedom, what does freedom really actually mean? Because basic needs are not met when you're an American. The ability to have an education, apart from K through 12 again, right? It's expensive. It's something that you have to go in debt to have an education to advance your life, right? Which in turn will help you gain more money if you're getting, a certain job that's going to be in a field that's going to help you gain more money, right? Having access to healthcare, that again gets tied to the type of job that you have, or how good the benefits are from your job, right? Or even let's say you don't have a job that's giving you insurance for healthcare. If you're having to pay out of pocket and you're paying upwards or minimum, let's say $500 per month to have access to insurance, just to again have your basic needs met, or not being able to trust the food supply. These are things where, for me, when I think about it and having lived in France, I'm like, if these basic things are not met, I cannot say that I feel like I'm free. How am I free? Freedom of the press? Can we even say that's free? Because the press is owned by a few groups. We live in an oligarchy. Unfortunately, that is kind of the reality of what the US is. And I'm going to go into that more later. But when I think about that, I don't know if you guys are aware, recently there was a cartoonist who resigned, I think from the Washington Post, which now Jeff Bezos owns, because she wanted to post this cartoon showing the billionaires, bowing down to Trump and, giving them money so they can do whatever they want to do. And her cartoon not being published because the oligarchic because Bezos was not obviously going to be happy with that, or no one wanted to offend the actual leaders of the world, right? So if the press, the New York Times, because since the war in Palestine has been happening, right, they're firing journalists, not actually posting authentic, real, factual truths about what was going on. So if the press is owned by a select few, so certain ideas that we want to push forth, we can't. Fox News is owned by this, I think, if memory serves me right, Fox News, and I think the person that owns the New York Times is some like racist Australian guy. I can't think of his name right now. If you know the name, please let me know below. So the places that we get our news from, are they really free if they're owned by a select few, and there's certain things certain things can't be put in the press because of who it's owned by? Where do our freedoms really lie? So going back to the freedom, for me, one of the things that I prefer about living in France is most likely speaking, right? Because owning a gun, you're not allowed to own a gun in France. I think there's some caveats to that. I think if you want to like do hunting, I believe you can. I think there's a caveat to that. It's not just, you can't own a gun, period. But just wanting to have a gun as far as like, self-defense, I want to keep it in my home just because I want to have it, is not a thing here. The US is the number one country per capita that owns the most guns. When I think about that, that does not make me feel safe, considering that every so often, within a few months or so, you're going to hear about a school shooting happening, a cinema shooting happening, a church shooting happening. There's these domestic terrorists that keep going and killing people, and nothing is being done by that, right? So for me, the fact that the US government officials have come together to ban TikTok, well, supposedly it's going to be banned tomorrow, because I'm filming this, today is the 18th, so it's going to be banned apparently tomorrow, have come together to ban TikTok because of national security. However, is that really it? Because it really seems like Facebook, former TikTok or former Twitter, etc., just really want to monopolize these TikTok and benefit from it. Really, that's really what it is, right? Because there goes Zuckerberg just reneging on the factual things that you can actually post on Facebook now, right? So again, at the end of the day, it's all about money. It's just about control and power, and that's really what it is. So I hope TikTok does not sell, does not bend to the will to the US government. Somebody will make something else, right? But again, this is all about power. But I'm saying this to paint the picture of the government can come together to ban TikTok under the guise of national security, but we cannot come together and ban guns or limit access to guns so we don't continue having gun violence in the US. That for me is something I can't fathom, and I don't feel safe, honestly, because of that, like being in the US. Whereas here, it is not something I worry about. I don't worry that, like, and again, it's not to say that it couldn't happen, but the likelihood of it happening is very slim. I don't worry that I'm gonna be in a cinema one day and somebody's gonna come in with a gun and start shooting people, or in a grocery store, or anywhere. That is a scary thought. It's sad to have to think that people have to live like that, and it doesn't make any sense to me. For being the most powerful, quote unquote, greatest country in the world, why does your greatness, your freedom, have to impose on other people? Well, it doesn't make sense to me. So that's something I personally can't fathom, but it's America. So moving on to education. Again, for me, this fits under freedom, right? Because this is the home of the free and the brave, quote unquote. If we're so free, I don't think education should have to cost an arm and a leg. I think the US has exceptional, wonderful institutions for school. I do. I think there's some great institution. Because of the fact that I am a graduate and I have my degrees, it's afforded me the life that I have, right? Where I can move and travel. But it doesn't mean that because I have my degree, that's the only reason I have been able to do the things that I've done in life, right? I can, with or without it, I probably would have, but it facilitated, it made things easier for me to be able to do that, right? Because I was able to study abroad in France while I was in undergrad, that kind of it got the ball rolling, right? And having that experience made me want to come back to France, and I made it happen And that, for me, I'm so grateful for because of the education that I have. But that education also came with the fact that while I did have some grants and some scholarships, etc., I did eventually have to take out loans. And I actually ended up having to do that because of my study abroad. But I am so glad that I did, because that experience was so worth it for me. But it's a shame that someone, one has to go in debt to be able to experience things like that. And for me, one of the ways that I decided to kind of help with that debt was joining AmeriCorps. And let me tell you, that was probably the most difficult job I've had. And I was commuting 4 hours per day, 4 hours, 2 hours each way. That, after that experience is when I ended up coming to France. So I'm like, I have not looked back, okay? But the idea that students have to go in debt to be educated is sad. The idea that we're pushing forth, what is it called? Oh my God, what are these people calling it? I can't think of the name right now. Please, it'll probably come up to me when I'm editing the video. But getting rid of actual history, because white people in the US are afraid to come to terms with the fact that your ancestors and you currently are benefiting off of the fact that slavery happened in the US, right? And taking out actual facts in the history books because it's going to make white children or other white people in general feel bad or feel like they're the bad guys. I mean, it is a fact. It is what it is. It happened. So either you can learn from it and do better in the future, or we can start repeating the same cycle that it just seems to be happening now. And it's a shame that people are going to these extremes to not actually teach realities, factualities that have happened in the US. So I think it's just a shame that the idea of the DEI hires, or the idea that the Equal Rights Act is just there to benefit minorities, when in fact white women are the ones that have gained the most when it comes to the Equal Rights Act, right? And I know Reaganomics wants to push forth the idea of the welfare mammy. When we look at that as well, white women are the largest recipient of welfare. So oftentimes things are skewed, right, to push forth these ideals that people have of who's really reaping the benefits of the country, the government, etc. And when you look at the numbers don't lie. But minorities, quote unquote, we're the minorities, right? Our population is much smaller than white people. So if we were to say 75% of the US population is white and then 25% is quote unquote minority, how could we ever be the ones that are reaping the benefits for real of these quote unquote hires, right? And you can look at it now when it comes to the fires that are going on in California, where they're blaming it, the media's trying to blame it on the fire departments that are there because they're being led by women or people of color. It's really baffling and interesting, but it's a shame that the system is becoming what it is, right? One of the things I personally value in France is the fact that education is basically free. Basically free. There are exceptions to the rules, right? If you want to go to a specific engineering school, there are schools in France that you do have to pay for. I think maybe it's like 300, I don't know. Let's just say 5,000 euros, probably less than that, right? Per year. I think it's much less than that, right? But even as someone that is a foreigner, if I wanted to go to school, it's a few hundred euros a year. But again, it's just the ideas that we have of certain things is warped. But I will say personally, I do prefer the American college experience versus, let's say, the French college experience, because it's very different, right? There are things, there are pros and cons to things, but I think all in all, the fact that education is so expensive, people are going into debt. Thousands of, let's say average, is 30,000 a year, and that's probably on the low end for a cost of a school, right? It's just unfathomable that you're paying this much. And then imagine when it's foreigners that want to go to school in the US, they have to pay probably double that, and also prove that they can stay here without having to reap anything off of the government. It's really a shame that this is the system that we have. Next, under the Freedom umbrella is healthcare. One of the things that I value about France is the healthcare. Let me just say, the first couple of years that I was here, I never even went to the doctors because when I was afraid it was gonna be really expensive, I didn't want to be in debt. Like, okay, I knew people in my family who went in debt for medical expenses, and I will say this: I am not happy with Biden, especially with regards to how he's handled the war on Gaza by Israel, and the US government is funneling funding towards Israel with regards to that. I'm not happy with him when it comes to that. However, the fact that just before he's leaving, he's signed into effect, I hope it will go into effect, but correct me if I'm wrong, how we're going to eliminate showing medical debt on the credit scores. I think that's a wonderful thing because it's going to help a lot of people. And it's a shame that people have to go into debt for just a basic necessity of life. Healthcare. I personally, living in France, I don't mind that I am paying higher taxes for the fact that healthcare is cheap. Okay, the first, and in the years I've been here, the prices have gone up. I think now when you go to a general doctor, because they have two versions of this, right? You can go to a practitioner that is level 1, or practitioners is level 2, and level 2 they can kind of charge whatever they want, which is usually double the normal price. So a normal practitioner is about, I think, let's say 25 euros per visit, right? But with the Sécurité Sociale that French has, 70% of that is covered by them, and then the rest you have to pay out of pocket. And if you have a job, you can get insurance through your job, and then your job will cover that 30%, right? So it is so, and it's so cheap. Medication is so cheap. Like, when I look at how much a medication will cost, it's like 30 euros. Like, I remember I had to get an IUD. The IUD, it ended up being free, but it was like, let's say 30 euros. The US could never. The US could never, okay? Something else that, and this is a journey that I'm actually going through and I plan on documenting, so if you're interested in wanting to know about this, please let me know. Something that was recently passed a few years ago in France is the ability for women, okay, and single women who are not undergoing any medical issues that would make them infertile, can do egg freezing for free. The only aspect of it that you have to pay for is just the freezing aspect, and even that is really inexpensive. So the fact that in the US, if you want to freeze your eggs to give yourself that freedom to have a child, if you want to have a child whenever you want, it's so nice that this country is affording that to women. And this was a long fight, okay, for women to be able to have this, but finally, since I think it was 2021, it's now accessible. However, the wait period, the hoops you have to jump through is difficult, but for the fact that like it's free, so I'm paying free $99 instead of paying the average of $11,000 per cycle in the US is crazy. And basically you can do it as many times, to harvest the eggs as possible. Like within, they have like time limits of when you can and cannot do it. So if you want to know more about that, I can go into detail about that, like in that specific video. But having that, I think, is wonderful. But I will also say, knowing that the birth rates are plummeting all over the world, I personally think it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the fact that it is going to... Capitalism doesn't work when you don't have the slave force behind it. And that's kind of what the world is seeing, and that's why a lot of countries are trying to push women to have kids, or make it easier. But the US doesn't want to make it easier, because you can look at how, when it comes to leave after you've had a child, that's not even something that you're guaranteed to be, for it to be paid for. Just a lot of things, when you look at it, you're just like y'all are really advanced. This is a real, good country, because it's not giving that. It doesn't look like that when you don't really care about the basic necessities of your citizen. That, for me, is sad. It's unfortunate to think that your citizens can't afford health care. They barely have job security. And we're free? What is free? And at the end of the day, when it comes to this free system of quote-unquote capitalism, that's really what it's there for. It's just to benefit the very few and take advantage of the many. I've seen a lot of propaganda being pushed, let's say even by Macron. Recently Macron said something, this may be like a year or two ago, I don't remember exactly when, of like pushing this thing to test fertility. And it was the same person who does not have a child because he's married to his that's how I see it, because it's giving Mary Kay Letourneau. He's actually married to his teacher. Okay, so he's talking about, you know, people need to make more kids. Why don't you go make some kids with your woman? Okay, so a lot of I'm using that example because a lot of countries, leaderships are in the U.S. included, are trying to push for women basically producing more children to feed the capitalistic system that we have, i.e. why Roe versus Wade was removed, unfortunately, by the Supreme Court that we have now. So again, for me, these things, when it comes to transportation, food, healthcare, costs of living slash job security, education, and quote unquote, yeah, the gun situation, these things, if you don't actually have them accessible in a beneficial way for the population, I don't really see the US as being free. I don't see that freedom. I really don't. And again, like I've already touched on the freedom of the press, right? Are you really free? Freedom of religion. And even with that, when it comes to freedom of religion, if you're Christian, it's wonderful, because imagine when you're being sworn in to be president, you're like have to swear in with the Bible, or when you're in court hearings. I don't know if they still do that to this day. Correct me if I'm wrong. Swearing on a Bible, like, yeah, if you're Christian, Catholic, whatever, sure, great, wonderful. But if you're not those religions, then here comes the xenophobia. So there's that. These are some of my thoughts about, you know, these myths that Americans are indoctrinated into believing. If you want a more in-depth list of things that I appreciate about my experiences having lived in France, if you have any questions for me, please do not be afraid to write me, write a comment below. Add your myths of these beliefs that we have as American, or, you know, how the world even sees you. If you're not American and you have like certain beliefs or views of how Americans behave or idealize certain things or whatever, please write them. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, for listening to this video. If there's anything that I missed when it comes to the myths about living in the US and the indoctrination that we have as Americans, and, you know, the American centricism that we have and not wanting to really experience other cultures and worlds, please let me know below. Let me know your thoughts with regards to this video, if there's anything that I missed to include. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you want more videos from me, please let me know what you'd like to hear about when it comes to France. Please check out the playlists I made in the past, because those videos are really old. But if you want an updated version of those videos, please do let me know. And if you are trying to, you know, move abroad to a different country, experience different cultures and people, I would definitely urge you guys to do so. The world is big. You have one life to live, experience. It really just change the way that you think and view things. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I'm just so happy I've afforded myself the opportunity to live in this country, experience things, even though it's negative and positive. But again, both countries have their positive and negatives. But it's just really changed my worldview, and I'm so grateful for that. I love that. And just taking a chance to do a study abroad, and how that choice has impacted the rest of my life is crazy to think. If you have that opportunity, I urge you to do it. I urge you to travel. Even if you can do a sabbatical, do it. Just take 1 year, 6 months, 1 month, whatever you can. Go somewhere else and live and experience and appreciate. And, you know, there will be aspects of it where you might appreciate, you know, certain things about your country a lot more, which there's aspects of that which I definitely do, because the bureaucracy in France, whew, that is something in and of itself. But the experience that you're afforded in just being and interacting with other people, I think is just it's amazing, and I think everybody should have that opportunity. So if you can, please take the opportunity to, if you have any questions, please don't forget to ask. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and you'll be back soon for a new video. Peace.
Pull up, pull up, I pull up, pull up, I pull up, I pull up.